This is Doc with Doc and Lefty. You're listening to us on webcast1live.com. We are here every Tuesday from 6 to 7 p.m. Thank you for tuning in today. Today, we have, of course, Lefty is here in the audience.
Good evening. How's it going?
Going all right.
Good.
How was your weekend?
Well, the weekend was all right. The week has been okay. It's nice to see you again every Tuesday at 6, 7. You know, I got to tell you, though, the big danger that we have today, I know that you're going to get into it, but I'm going to step on your intro a little bit.
All right.
We actually have a real live guest in the audience.
Yes, we do.
We had two real live guests 2 weeks ago, but it was just me, so it was a lot easier to kind of like ringlead that little circus that we had going on. You and I don't do well with guests, Doc. We don't. No,
because we have a tendency to step on whoever brings the guest in.
A little bit. Kind of like what we're doing right now.
Well, but, you know, the good news about my guest is, one, he's a business owner, and two, he's a Second Amendment freak, for lack of a better term. His name's Mike Sporer. He owns JLM Gun Shop in Urbandale, which is right next to Brad Zahn's old store.
Oh, good.
So that's where he's at. Mike, how are you doing?
I'm doing well tonight.
How was your weekend?
Fantastic.
You think you can hold up against Lefty today?
You know, I've debated a lot of liberals in my life, and I like my chances.
Good. So,
I didn't realize you were going to moderate this thing, buddy boy.
Well, no. Well, what else am I going to do?
That's
going to say, that's right, Mike.
That's a good.
Absolutely, Mike.
That's a good point. Did you like how I snuck moderate into his?
He's always trying to accuse me of being a liberal or a moderate. And,
I don't accuse you of anything. I would never do that.
You accused me of being a jerk today on Facebook.
I did not. You also called my brother-in-law an idiot.
I didn't call him an idiot.
That's true. All right, let's get on with the show, though. Let's get. See, this is what
we do all the time.
This is what our problem
I'm having
is.
fun already.
Well, you know, I'm going to give Mike a little bit of a background about you and I.
Okay.
We used to be neighbors, and Blake had this tendency to start shoveling his walk at about 10:30 at night, and I'd be out there, and I'd go, what's going on? So I go out there, and I'd help him a little bit, or I'll be doing mine, and next thing you know, we're arguing in the middle of the street. Neither one of us with the common sense to go inside, but we'd stand there till midnight, arguing in the street over these politics things.
The weirdest thing about it is when he came up and introduced himself to me, he said, "Hey, my name is Dr. Pat Bertroche, and I hear that you're in law school." I'd never met him before. I didn't know how what kind of homework he'd done on me, and it was kind of creepy.
Well, I'm a psychiatrist. I read minds.
Fair enough. But we hit it off, and one of the things that we really sort of like to tangle about is the Second Amendment. Not necessarily, its practical application today, because in my opinion, that's fairly well settled. We haven't had any major gun legislation even attempted since the assault weapons ban got repealed. And we haven't had anything, and the D.C. Heller case was the first major Supreme Court decision on the Second Amendment since the 1940s. And so while today, when I was talking to Doc about this last week, when I kind of brought up, it would be kind of fun, because we started getting into it a little bit last week. What would be kind of fun to do with the Second Amendment is bring a couple of people in, one from each side. I had somebody, but he wasn't able to be here tonight, and kind of talk about sort of the philosophy of the Second Amendment. Like I said, not necessarily its practical application today, although I'm sure that we'll probably get into that at some point during the show. And so kind of like the underpinnings of the Heller decision, what the basis for the Second Amendment was, we think, what it is today, and whether or not there's any compromise.
Oh, yeah, that all sounds good. That was a whole bunch of legal speak.
I'm really trying to get out in front early.
Yes, I see that. And, thank you for not using a whole lot of Latin.
You're welcome.
Because I didn't know if you were trying to call me a homonym or a hominid earlier. So I was kind of confused.
They're not the same thing?
I don't know, Mike. Are they the same thing?
You're way out of my area of expertise.
Is that it? Is that it?
I was a business major.
All right. Well, let's start with a major victory today for gun rights advocates. I believe it was a federal appeals court, struck down the Illinois almost complete ban on any kind of personal weaponry of a gunpowder nature, and they struck that down. Do you know the ins and outs of that case?
I don't. I know that Illinois is probably the most restrictive, has the most draconian gun laws on the planet.
All right.
So I'm glad I didn't hear anything about that. I've been very busy, since the election.
I bet.
The election has been very, very good to me.
Well, why has it been good to you?
Well, the panic that the reelection of Barack Obama has caused among the gun owning community.
Do you think he's really set against taking the weapons away?
Oh, we'd love to.
Well,
he wrote all of those gun laws you're speaking of in Illinois.
Yeah, he's the one who wrote them.
He was the man when he was a state senator.
Really?
How many gun laws has he enacted so far during his presidency, Mike?
How many gun laws?
Yeah.
They've done a lot of different things.
Like what?
Mostly behind the scenes. Really, laws? No.
No, none?
More policy through the ATF.
Oh, there's been policy changes with the ATF, like a president's prerogative. But have they seized anybody's guns?
Have they seized any guns?
Yeah.
Just the ones that they recovered from the murder scenes that they let go to Mexico.
Okay.
Seized those.
Have they changed any gun laws at all?
Well, they haven't had an opportunity.
They haven't had an opportunity. Well, he's been president for 4 years.
Yeah, but
he passed Obamacare before he did anything.
Yeah, he
with
was
guns.
very, very busy with Obamacare.
Okay, so
and we shoved that down our throat in his first 2 years, and then he lost control. He can't enact any.
He can't enact anything.
No.
Well, so we should be really worried about gun laws.
Well,
we should be. Yeah.
Let me bust in here as far as seizures. They did seize a ton. I mean, multi-thousands of World War II vintage guns that were shipped in here. So they did seize that, and they're now, I don't know, in the secret vault where, Raiders of the Lost Ark have their stuff.
Well, and they stopped the importation of any more of them as well.
Yeah. So I think he did that by executive privilege. Is that how he did it?
He did, and that's government property.
Yeah, so that's one kind of seizure they did.
Do they belong to private owners?
They always have tradition. I'm sorry.
Sorry.
They always traditionally what has happened. The civilian marksmanship program has imported those guns. The lion's share of those guns are in Korea, and they've been there since the Korean conflict. And we bring them in 40, 50,000 at a time through the civilian marksmanship program for civilians to buy. And he stopped that.
Okay.
All right. Well, we're coming up on our first break. We will be back in about 1 minute. Again, this is Doc with Doc and Lefty. You're listening to us on webcast1live.com. We have Mike Sporer in today as our guest, and we're talking about Second Amendment rights. Mike has a gun shop out in Urbandale, right next to Brad Zahn's old store. It's called JLM Gun Shop. What's the phone number out there?
515-331-1577.
All right, great. We will be back in 1 minute. Is this the 1 minute one, Frank? Or all right, we'll be back in 1 minute. Thanks everybody for tuning in.
From the RE/MAX Real Estate Concept Studios, this is Webcast One Live.
Drug and alcohol addiction slowly steals a person's identity, tearing away pieces of their life little by little, until one day it seems like the hope of a happy future is gone and there's no chance of getting it back. Here at St. Gregory Retreat Centers, we can assure you that there is hope. Our unique approach to recovery begins with the understanding that the dysfunction and damage caused by addiction can be overcome, not just dealt with. Don't let another day go by. Call St. Gregory today.
It's like they want to get hit.
Need a body shop?
Minor Wreck Express saves you time and money.
This is Doc with Doc and Lefty. It's a little hot in the studio, so I had to take off my Guns and Hoses shirt, and then I just realized that the little trunk on the elephant makes it look like I have two horns on my head. Isn't that cool? Yeah, it's tough. It's tough to impress the ladies with this kind of look. I'm going to tell you that.
Well, I need all the help I can get, apparently. So,
well, you're looking snazzy in that Argyle thing.
You can't.
You look like you're straight out of a Tolkien kind of Tolkien or what is it, C.S. Lewis?
See,
you're in the back of the wardrobe.
Those guys were my heroes growing up. So I appreciate the compliment.
Oh yeah. Well, we are here today with Mike Sporer, owner of JLM Gun Shop in Urbandale, Iowa. Mike, what made you want to start a gun shop?
Well, mostly probably just a general lack of common sense. I've always been. I've been into guns, most of my adult life. starting at a very young age. And I've had a federal firearms license for probably 30 years. And a friend of mine was getting ready to retire that owned JLM, and I'd been 18 years owning restaurants, and I was real sick of that. So it just came together.
Yeah, well, Blake can be with you there on being sick of restaurants.
I gotta
sure.
tell you, being in the restaurant business, being in food and beverage myself, I can completely sympathize and understand why someone want to open up a gun shop, because that is not a business. That is not a business for the faint of heart. And I'd probably have taken a couple of Second Amendment remedies myself if I wasn't such a bleeding heart liberal.
Yes, absolutely. So, what changes have you seen? Now, when did you take over the JLM gun shop?
I bought the store in May of 11.
Okay.
So I've been there about a year and a half.
And since you've been a gun enthusiast most of your adult life, what changes have you seen in the gun community?
Well, there's just been a general, and this is true all over America, where it's allowed. There's just been a general groundswell of personal gun ownership. A lot of self-defense weapons is probably the lion's share of the business, and people, it's been growing for probably 10 years. But when President Obama has a long track record of being very anti-gun, and when he got the nomination, people just absolutely stepped outside their mind buying guns and ammunition. So it's been good for 5 years.
All right. So what? Have you seen any increase in women owning firearms?
Huge increase. They're
right.
probably the fastest growing segment.
Okay, so what would you typically tell a girl or a woman, either way, when they come into your shop? How would you direct them? How would you find the right gun for them?
Well, we try to do a little research and try and find out what they're going to do. Do they want to target shoot? Do they want to use home protection, or do they want to carry it? And then we kind of lead them towards something that is appropriate for one of those. Whatever they're going to do with the gun, and something that they can physically handle and master. It does no good to carry a gun that you can't use, that you're not able to shoot accurately. So that's kind of, we start with a little research on what they're going to do, and then kind of point them in the right direction.
All right. Now, one of the changes that I've seen in the last decade that I've been watching with more and more concern is the UN is country by country not making these countries, because obviously it's voluntary, but are entering in agreements with these countries to do away with all their weapons, all their private ownership. How do you see that impacting the United States, or do you see it impacting us at all?
Well, to my knowledge, and and I'm certainly no expert, but to my knowledge, those UN agreements have to be ratified by the governing bodies of those countries. So I don't see it impacting us at all. I think it's much ado about nothing. I think that people are in a panic about it, when in reality, our Congress would have to agree to that, and I just don't see that happening.
That's completely right. And any sort of UN, it would be in essence a treaty that the UN would sign with the or that the United States had to be a signatory to, and for any treaty to be ratified, it has to be signed by the president, and then ratified by 67 members or 67 senators. And there's no way that that's ever going to happen, because there's no way that first of all, gun policy is fairly settled in this country as far as the laws are concerned. And so 67 senators signing on to something like that, I think, is just completely out of the question.
Okay. My thing that I read on this latest run that they had with Hillary running out to the UN trying to garner some support, apparently. I think
support for what?
Support for this gun ban treaty. She went out to the UN and tried to garner some kind of support or a little bit of a change in this law back in September, October, I can't remember when. But one of the things that's a true sticking point is that in the law itself that they're trying to, or in the treaty itself, one of the phrases that they're using is that this treaty would supersede our own Constitution. They don't say it exactly that way, but it would say it would supersede all other agreements. And as far as I know, that's unconstitutional, because doesn't the Constitution say that there's no other law above.
Well, I mean, the Constitution doesn't say that, but that's been the holding since the Constitution has been interpreted by the Supreme Court. But treaties do become what you could consider to be the law of the land, and so that means that any treaty that is ratified by the Congress, by the Senate, essentially, and signed by the president, becomes U.S. law. And so the various treaties like that we have with Canada for like game birds and things like that. Those are binding on U.S. citizens, and the other treaties that we have with like the Status Forces Agreement treaty that we have with Iraq, things like that. I mean, they are they're binding as law, but superseding the Constitution, I don't see how that would even be possible.
All right.
Yeah, your garden variety treaty doesn't conflict with our Constitution, so that's probably a question that's probably something that's never been addressed. I don't think we've probably ever entered into a treaty that directly contradicted the Constitution of the United States.
And I don't think it's even a partisan issue. I think that any language would be taken up by the councils of whatever president was in office at the time, and the general councils of any of the senators that would be on the committees that would be discussing ratifying it. And if any country or the UN body was so foolish enough as to say this replaces the United States Constitution ad hoc, I think that there would be a dull roar. Do you think a dull roar, Mike?
There might be a full-blown shooting war.
Yeah, it wouldn't be good. Whatever it would be.
That wouldn't be good.
So, what do you think that there should be any limits on the weapons you're allowed to purchase?
Yes, absolutely.
All right. So, what limits do you think should be on?
I like the rules that we have now against automatic weapons. That govern the ownership of fully automatic weapons. There is a process for doing it. It's a lot of hoops to jump through, as well it should be, because those can fall in. That's a weapon that could fall. That just they're dangerous.
All weapons are dangerous.
They are, but there are different levels. And you could take that to its illogical end and say, well, should I be able to have a rocket launcher? In my opinion, no.
All right. Well, I'm actually going to disagree with my own guest. I think you should be able to buy whatever it is that you want to buy, as long as you're going to be responsible for it.
As long as you're going to be responsible. Define responsibility.
Well, if it gets loose, right? Mm-hmm. Somebody steals it, or you don't lock your safe and there's a crime committed, you should be responsible for that. There is a certain amount of responsibility with owning things, just like your car. I mean, we talk about this a lot with, cars. If you own a car and you let somebody borrow it and they go out and they ram into something, you're still responsible for that vehicle. And I think the same kind of thing should apply here. If you have a weapon, then you should be responsible for how it is used.
Let me ask you this question. So, taking what you've said, that all bets are off as long as it's responsible, would you agree with me that a responsible thing would be to protect your home and your family?
Yes, I do.
And do you think that a responsible thing would be to protect your home and your family from all people trying to invade your home and harm your family?
Yes, I do.
And do you think that a reasonable amount of force to do that would be with something like a rocket launcher?
Well, it depends on how many people are entering my home.
Say 10.
Oh, yeah.
Okay, and do you then so say that rocket launcher launcher that you fire, presumably inside your house, if they're invading your property, because you're not going to stand on your property and shoot people in your yard.
What do you mean?
Because they wouldn't really be a danger to your family at that point, would they?
Well, if
they're going to be inside your house.
If there's a gang outside and coming through the door,
the
best thing to do is not to let them through the door.
Right, but if they're coming
through the door, that's why we need castle law.
And you're firing your bazooka at them, and some shrapnel hits a passing bystander, should you be responsible for that bystander's injuries?
Absolutely.
Even though what you have done is a legitimate protection of your own property.
That is correct. And
so therefore it's irresponsible, right? Because you hurt somebody.
That's called collateral damage. It is not the intent, but you still need to be responsible for it. I'm all for that.
And would you pay that person damages?
Whatever the court would determine.
And whatever the court would determine, so you just wouldn't do it. You'd have to have a court order you to do it.
Well, it's just like if you're driving down the road and you ram into somebody with your car.
Mm-hmm.
No, I'm not going to jump out and go, here's a $10,000.
Did that person that was passing by have a bazooka? Because I feel like the liability would be fairly clear.
Well, unfortunately, we have to stop this line of questioning because I'm in control. No, we'll come back. We'll come back to this. We're going to be back in 3 minutes.
I want to see a pow on the
No
elephant.
pow on there. There's no pow. I answered the questions. We'll be back in 3 minutes. We have our guest, Mike Sporer, who's with us. He owns JLM Gun Shop. Tomorrow, please give him a call. 331-1577 if you're interested in weapons or ammunition or just finding out about the weapons that he has over there. We'll be back in 3 minutes. Thanks, everybody, for tuning in.
I'm Brian Leach, owner and general manager of Service Legends. I brought along a couple of the home comfort heroes.
Hi, I'm Tammy Wells.
I am Nick Wondershad.
I'm administrative manager.
I'm the senior technician
from Service Legends.
It seems like every good thing, when you feel it to the bone that it's good, there's a lot of hard work put behind it. I don't think that you can fake it and have it turn out good.
You know, if we seem like, okay, that's just weird, it's just a furnace, why would you believe so deeply in a furnace? It's not just that, you know, we want to show the world that you can have good service.
Yeah, I mean, it's your home.
You know, it's built into our daily trainings, it's built into our culture, that we're gonna do whatever it takes to have each client say they love us, period.
That's why we spend all the hours in the training that we do. And if we guarantee it's gonna be a good experience for you, or else it's free, what type of work do you think we're gonna do?
There is a guarantee.
Temperature selection guarantee, fixed rider it's free guarantee, comfort guarantee, best value guarantee. All of these guarantees hold us accountable to ensuring that we exceed your expectations. And if for whatever reason we'd fail and we can't make it right, we guarantee all of those guarantees with a 100% money back guarantee.
I mean, if you don't think that your technician can fix it right, are you gonna say that to a client? No.
You don't have to worry about having a technician come to your house.
We drug test, background check all of our team members. We put safe people in your home. Each and every one of our service techs, 400 hours a year in training.
You tell it the minute they walk in the door. They know what they're doing, they've done their homework, and they actually truly care about what you want.
Because at the end of the day, you're the person that makes sure I have a job.
They're gonna be listening. They're gonna wanna know what your challenges are. Then they're gonna come and give you options, and you get to choose.
If I'm there to help and I make it easy and painless, I did my job right that day.
Well, when it comes to your comfort, safety, and your family, you know, you don't necessarily go buy the most expensive, but you get the most bang for your buck.
Oh, it's worth it, because there's a lot of people that will find a way to get it to work right now and then leave and then come back, charge you again, and the cycle just repeats itself. So when I'm out there looking at the furnace, I want to find why it failed today. How can we change the part today with something that you're not going to have to worry about? Is it worth changing the part today? I mean, you can put a lot of money into a furnace. I can fix parts all day. There's good job security in that for me, but is it the right thing for you?
I get a lot of the phone calls of after the technicians are there. They're just in awe. They're like, wow, you guys are great. I mean, I don't even know what to say. You guys are great. Everything you did was perfect. It was great.
Keep going though, I like this.
Just give us a try. I'm gonna take all the risk.
I've got the time to make this right. I've got the support to make it right.
Just check us out.
And if you don't see the value in what we do,
I mean, fixed rider, it's free or 100% money back.
enough said.
Welcome back. This is Lefty with Doc and Lefty. Doc has given me control of the show for a second. I think he's licking his wounds after that last thrashing that he took at my hands. But while we're here, we want to remind you that we got Mike Sporer with us, the owner of JLM Gun Shop in Urbandale. He's really kind enough to come on and put up with our tomfoolery. But Mike, I wanted to ask you a couple of questions because, you know, before the show and during some of the breaks, we've been talking about kind of like our views of gun ownership and as I suspected, being two reasonable people, that you and I would agree on a few things. You said during the break that you didn't really trust or believe in the full extent of the Castle Doctrine. I'd like you kind of expound on that for our listeners.
Well, I think the Castle Doctrine in its purest form, and the people that seem to want to promote it, certainly in this state, you know, it's kind of a no questions asked. If someone's in your home, you know, you can use deadly force. I don't think that's reasonable. I don't think that's a good thing. What I do believe, and what we need to do away with in this state, is the duty to retreat, and we certainly need to do away with it in your home.
I guess I wasn't aware that there was a duty to retreat in the home. I know that there's a if you can find a safe means of retreat, like in a bar fight or something, then you absolutely have a duty to kind of back away or use reasonable force in defending yourself to the extent that you don't become the aggressor. But in the home, I didn't think that in Iowa there was that duty to retreat. Maybe I'm just ignorant of that part of the law.
Well, in Iowa, it is the duty to retreat, but what it also says is that you need to be in fear for your life.
Mm-hmm.
And that creates a ton of gray area. Me being, I'm a 270-pound man, me being in fear for my life would be a way different test than a 110-pound woman. So it's there's a lot of gray area, a lot of ambiguity in it.
And that's and maybe our legislature can kind of tighten up some of that language. But here's a question that I wanted to talk to somebody about who is a gun owner and is a proud gun owner. And it's sort of like I don't want to be misunderstood. It's something we talked about last week's show. Not the culture of gun ownership, but the sort of the culture of conceal and carry. And I'll just kind of preface my question to you really quickly. I had a friend of mine when I was in law school who was really a big advocate for conceal and carry. Thought that was really a good safety precaution for people. That was really a good way for if you thought that someone else had a gun, if you were carrying a gun, you thought that someone else is carrying a gun, then sort of the mutually assured destruction that you wouldn't fire on the other person. My response to that has always been, and we can kind of go back debate that a little bit if you happen to disagree. My response to that has always been, well, that just means that I'm going to shoot faster. Like if I see you and you look threatening to me, rather than sort of talk to you, if I think that you have a gun and I think that you might use it, rather than show my gun, I'm just going to try and outdraw you. And to me, that, taken to its illogical extreme, means that there be chaos. That means that everybody be shooting everybody. Mm-hmm. And so I just kind of wanted to respond to that concern.
Well, I think that, again, that is one of those, much ado about nothing. That was what the people that argued against the changes in our concealed carry laws a year ago in January, blood in the streets,
Mm-hmm.
OK Corral, Wild Wild West. Well, as usual, none of that has come true. In fact, I have, and I've been around this all my life. I read about it extensively. I don't know of any cases where two concealed carry weapons permit holders ever had a gunfight. Someone sent me an email the other day, and it's very, very true. The only way to get shot by a concealed weapons permit holder is to point a gun at him.
Sure.
So people with concealed weapons permits, they've gone through all of the processes they're legally able to obtain it. And it's a fairly extensive background check. So they're really not getting in the hands of too many people that shouldn't have them. And secondly, and I talk to literally dozens of these people every day, incredibly responsible, hardworking, segment of society.
And so in that instance, you would then agree, and this isn't a political statement at all, that there is common sense legislation that can be employed to permit something like conceal and carry and yet still protect the public.
I absolutely believe that there should be a background check.
Mm-hmm.
I liked the old law where you had to qualify with the weapon. In fact, I used to be an instructor, and we qualified dozens of people every month. Some people just simply weren't able to do it.
Is that still in the law, or has that been taken out?
No, that's out of the law. You don't have to shoot. I liked that, but every little step that we take, putting in, well, you have to do this, you have to do this, you have to do this. We are obviously we're getting further and further away from our constitutional right to carry a firearm.
What do you think would be the red line, or have we crossed it already, in your opinion?
In terms of what?
In terms of just gun legislation, gun ownership.
No, we haven't crossed it. No,
Okay.
we haven't crossed it. I think that we have literally hundreds of gun laws. They work well when they're applied. None of them, in my opinion, seem to be unreasonable until we get into these jurisdictions where they just tell you can't have it.
Okay, but I mean, would you sort of maybe not agree with, but at least empathize with the sort of rational basis that the legislatures kind of have in their minds? I mean, places like Pittsburgh or Chicago, where the violence has escalated over the years, and gun advocates will say, well, they've escalated in spite of these ever more restrictive laws. But I feel like it's a chicken and egg problem. And so you have a legislature that sees violence and thinks that, we need to get rid of the guns, but the violence doesn't change. And so you have the NRA come in and say, well, see, you can't get rid of the guns. And do you feel like at least like the legislatures are at least trying to do their duty, and they're caught in sort of a rock and hard place?
What they are is they're misguided.
Okay,
they're misguided. If you look at, and this is just a statistical truth, it just can't be debated. Where personal gun ownership is high, legal personal gun ownership is high, violent crime is usually pretty darn low. And we've seen this groundswell of personal gun ownership in America over the last 10 years. And just coincidentally, according to the FBI studies, violent crime is in a constant decline.
It's 2011. It was 3.8% lower than it was even a couple of years ago.
An armed society is truly a polite society.
And the real kicker with that is usually when you have an economic downturn like we've had, crime does rise. And this is the first time, I believe, that they have shown that crime hasn't risen during the during this crisis. If this financial crisis,
it was so bad no one could buy a gun.
Yes, yeah.
Oh, they've been buying guns.
All right, you get a pow for that one.
Here's what I like to say. All right, if you're a criminal and you're walking down the street looking for a house to break into, are you going to break into the one with the big NRA sticker in the window or the Obama peace sign?
I'm going to shoot
where are you
going
to take your chances?
It depends. Is the guy with the Obama peace sign some 6'2", 270 pound dude, even if he doesn't have a gun in his hand? Probably gonna leave him alone. If the NRA member is some 110 pound woman who I might be able to crack a shot off first, well, I think that criminals in that hypothetical sort of go, they do a cost benefit analysis. It's all economics, and that's the thing that when I talk to people who are, real sort of gun advocates, and they talk about, well, you need guns to help prevent violence, and I agree with the statistic, obviously, because I've looked at those myself. The FBI is meticulous at that sort of stuff.
Absolutely.
Yeah. And so what I always kind of come back to is it heightens the danger of something happening to have a lot of loose guns around, because if someone's going to rob you, they're not going to take, unless they're a psychopath or a sociopath or someone who enjoys killing just for killing's sake, in which case no one is safe ever. They're not going to kill you just to get your stereo, because that heightens the danger for them, and it increases the risk of them getting caught. And so I think that if we looked at it from an economic standpoint, a lot of the sort of we need to protect our own with a gun to protect our property is just sort of, like you said, not a lot of there. Much ado about nothing.
All right. Now, that was a great segment. Thanks for Mike and Lefty to ace me out of it. That's okay.
I felt like I was a little left out of the last one.
No, all right. No, I'm just clowning around. We're going to take a quick break. We'll be back in 1 minute. We're going to continue with this very same discussion because I have some interesting statistics about what you guys were talking about. When we come back, we'll visit more with Mike, who owns a JLM Gun Shop. Give him a call if you're interested in purchasing a gun or just want to find out more about a weapon that would fit you. His number is 331-1577. You're listening to Doc and Lefty on webcast1live.com. We'll be back in 1 minute.
From the RE/MAX Real Estate Concept Studios, this is Webcast One Live.
Whether you're 10, 25, 50, 80 years old and beyond, everyone needs to live within their means. I'm Tom Coates with Consumer Credit of America. For almost a quarter of a century, we've helped people of all ages learn to manage their personal finances to benefit them far into the future. When problems arise, we've got the experience you need to make those debt problems go away. Got financial problems? Call Consumer Credit of America.
If Tom Coates from Consumer Credit of America was your personal webmaster, Tom would filter out all bad debt emails. If Tom was your mailman, you'd never get any debt reduction junk mail. If Tom Coates was a lineman, he'd block any phone calls offering to reduce your credit card debt.
Hi, I'm Tom Coates with Consumer Credit of America, and we're still your best choice for credit counseling. We're local, we're accountable, and we can do more. You make the call when the time's right for you.
When it comes to competition, there really is none for Consumer Credit of America.
This is Doc with Doc and Lefty. You're listening to us every Tuesday from 6 to 7 p.m. on webcast1live.com. Lefty is with us today in the studio as usual. He's kind of like a, bad fungus. No matter what you use on him, he just doesn't go away. And then we have Mike Sporer, who's with us. He's has JLM Gun Shop. It's out in Urbandale. His number is 331-1577. His business is right next to Brad Zahn's old hardware store. Give him a call. Now, before the break, we were talking about how you two guys think that, increased gun ownership really doesn't help prevent a lot of violent crimes.
Oh, I didn't say that.
I don't think that I said that either.
No, I think it absolutely does.
He said he said an armed society is a polite society.
Yes, I agree with that.
I was just saying that I feel like it could heighten the danger of like that armed robbery wouldn't become armed robbery if we didn't have arms. And you see what I'm saying? I don't disagree with the statistics at all.
No. Okay. Well, then I misunderstood. See, I need to pay attention. I was actually looking on Facebook, so I shouldn't do that during the segment, I guess. But one of the statistics I was looking at today is that there are 31,000 gun-related deaths. I mean, doesn't matter what it is. Guns killed 31,000 people, something like that. Vehicles, on the other hand, killed 34,000 people, and poisonings killed 45,000 people. Those are statistics from the CDC. When you break them down, suicides account for about a third, and active homicides count for just about 2/3, and the rest of them are accidental discharges. The interesting statistic in there is youths that were killed by an accidental discharge of a weapon were listed as 9 youths. One of the statistics that I was then also looking at is the number of violent crime deaths related to guns in each city and state. And of course, the number one areas were ones that banned them and have taken them away. Chicago's up there, Washington, D.C.'s up there, Los Angeles is up there, Detroit's up there.
Right. Once again, I feel like that's a chicken and an egg scenario because they banned them after the violence got so bad. And so those statistics are going to be skewed more towards that.
The D.C. ban was in the 70s.
The D.C. ban, the D.C. ban was, I guess, if you look at the crime rate from Washington, D.C. since the 70s up to now, has not changed. Even after the ban was lifted in 2008. The violent crime rate in Washington, D.C. has been fairly, up and down, but just it hasn't been really something that has engendered a lot of like hot-headed gun control debate since Heller was decided.
I think the gun violence in a city like D.C. and the personal ownership of firearms, it's going to take a while for that to bear out in the statistics.
And I completely agree with that, and we'll see what happens. What I would point out though, in places where there's lots of one thing that I looked at too when I was going over a few of the statistics, and I apologize, I didn't have time to get through as much of them as I wanted to, that homicides, violent crime in this country as just violent crime, like crimes with force, if there's a weapon involved, it's usually it's not a firearm.
No, it isn't.
However, violent crimes that result in homicides, 67.7% are with some kind of firearm. Because if you're going to commit a crime with a gun, you're probably going to kill the person. It's just that's probably what's going to happen.
It's just good manners.
The likelihood goes up. And so the question that I have, I guess, just for the two people that own guns, if there were fewer. And I'm not talking about a hypothetical situation where, the laws were more restrictive. I mean, just say that we all got together and just melted them all down, right? Say that just, all that was left were like hunting rifles that were impossible to conceal, okay? Do you think that the homicide rate in violent crime, which is disproportionately caused by firearms, would also go down? Or do you think that we just get more violent with bats and knives?
I think we just get more violent with what we have.
Why do you think that?
Well, one thing that we've done here, and one of these unintended consequences of the gun legislation, like the Colorado shooting, what we've done, and that theater was in a strict no firearm zone. So what we've done for these crazy people, we've set up kind of a little shooting gallery for people. That nut knew that no one in there, very unlikely that anyone would be armed to defend themselves. And we know that he didn't go there with any intentions because he gave himself up.
Mm-hmm.
He wasn't one of the crazy guys that does the suicide at the end of it all. So we've kind of set up these areas where a lunatic like that, he knows that he is free to do what he pleases.
Do you think that, and see, courthouses have the same kind of sticker on the door, but they also have metal detectors. Lynn County, Polk County, all the bigger counties. Do you think that if you're going to advertise yourself as a gun-free zone, you should probably have a metal detector at the door?
Yeah,
but they did have a metal detector out there. They had a metal detector.
He was let in an exit, wasn't he?
He let himself in.
He let himself in through an exit.
Yeah.
So in situations like that, I don't feel like any amount of legislation, and maybe I'm a little bit different than most liberals that you hear about, I don't feel like any amount of legislation is going to stop a guy like that. I really, really don't. However, once again, going back to my previous example, if all he had was a board with a nail in it, do you think he wouldn't have, the body count wouldn't have been as high? I don't think that there's any dispute about that.
Well, but here's the thing. This guy's basically an self-taught explosives expert. Thank God he had a gun, because if he could have if that would have been the simple way to do it. If he would have wired that place for bombs like he did his apartment, everybody would have been dead.
I can tell you another way that really would have lowered the body count if I would have been there with my gun.
And maybe he's in Kevlar with I mean, everybody says that.
That's just in the movies.
He's in a vest. He had his helmet on. No, that's what
I understand. But if someone gets shot with a vest, I mean, it breaks ribs.
Well,
knocks the wind out of you.
It'd knock him down.
He's going down.
Yeah,
that's just in the movies where they walk through waves of bullets.
Oh no, he'd knock him down, but he'd still get up and cap you. I feel like.
Well, I think if how many people were in that theater? Does anyone know exactly how many people were?
No, it was packed though.
It was
just
packed.
So and I've made this argument about like Jordan Creek Mall, 5,000 people in there on a Sunday probably. If just 5% of the people in there were carrying a gun, that'd be 250 people with a weapon.
Yeah, and that's
let's say someone goes crazy to shoot up that mall.
Well, and the one statistic I was looking at today is mass shootings, which is what we're talking about, is the scary thing lately. In mass shootings, I think an average of 12 and a half people die if there's nobody that has an arm, that has a weapon within, I think they said 1,000 feet. And within 1,000 feet, if a person has a weapon, the death toll from those mass shootings is 2 or less. And so having a weapon there does prevent mass shooters from killing more people.
Right, but if they didn't have the guns, that's the gun control argument. If those guns were harder to get, if like gun shows and sort of like where you can go wholesale and pick up where a lot of those folks don't have as tight paperwork, where the 5-day waiting period is a little bit more lax at these big fairs and stuff, which happens. I'm not saying that any responsible gun owner or gun shop would ever do that, but there are some irresponsible ones. That's where a lot of these guys get these weapons. And so I feel like if there was if those were sort of, I don't know, my personal view, and you know this about me, about my pacifistic sort of tendencies, although I do like shooting guns. I do.
It's fun stuff.
And I'm pretty good at
Just
it,
good
actually. You can ask a couple of guys I went trap shooting with how good I am at it. The thing is, there's this gut reaction that I have to hearing 250 people armed at Jordan Creek Mall. Is that the kind of society we want? I don't feel like I want to walk around feeling guarded by people I don't know.
Well, let me yesterday. Now, I have an apartment in Odessa, Ukraine.
Yep.
And just down the street from where I live. Now, keep in mind, Ukraine doesn't produce any weapons. They buy everything their army buys everything from the Chinese or the Russians or somebody else. They have zero manufacturing for weapons, for gunpowder weapons. For the most part, there's no private ownership of weapons. If I wanted to go hunting with a guide, I would have to go through a year-long process for a permit just to be able to fire that gun.
Mm-hmm.
It's virtually unheard of to have a gunpowder weapon over there. There's a bar, Bellini Bar, right down Richelieu Street, which is 4 blocks from where I am at. And I've been in that bar. There's an argument over girls. You know how guys get about girls. These 2 idiots leave, come back, and they bring back a weapon. And they proceed to shoot 2 innocent bystanders and 6 other people standing around. Now, if a person in Ukraine that has no manufacturing and private ownership is outlawed virtually, where are they getting the guns? Kingston, Jamaica. Jamaica has one of the highest rates of violent crime and homicide, and it's an island. Yet, with the added bonus that it's completely restricted, only about 1% of the population would ever be able to qualify for owning a gun. Yet they're in the top 5 of all violent homicides per capita in the world. So I don't think melting down these guns is going to eliminate the problem.
Well, but I mean, if you melted down all of them, it would.
Well, but that's
That's what I'm talking about, though.
Know,
That's the idea.
You gonna load them on your unicorn?
Yeah, I might.
You know, I might.
Yeah, well, you know, he is a virgin.
That can't be done.
What I will suggest, though,
give
is
me a
that,
pal for that, Ryan.
That there's very little. I think that's more. I think Mike's was better. You know, yours was just not true. At least when I zing you, it's factual. What I will say, though, is when that these correlation. I don't think that there's actually a correlative relationship between these places, these strict gun laws and violence. I mean, I feel like you could make the argument that Kingston, Jamaica has a high crime rate because it's economically deprived, not because the laws are really strict.
Well, but the bottom line is getting rid of the weapons down there isn't going to solve anything because they're an island. They've already tried to take all the weapons. They're still getting them. Now, on that note, we're going to be back in a minute. Thanks, everybody, for tuning in. We're going to listen to commercial. When we come back, we're going to talk about Kent Sorensen and his death penalty that he's going to try to reintroduce. This is Doc with Doc and Lefty. You're listening to us every Tuesday from 6 to 7 p.m. on webcast1live.com. Thanks for tuning in. We'll be back in a minute.
From the RE/MAX Real Estate Concept Studios, this is Webcast One Live.
Drug and alcohol addiction slowly steals a person's identity, tearing away pieces of their life little by little until one day it seems like the hope of a happy future is gone and there's no chance of getting it back. Here at St. Gregory Retreat Centers, we can assure you that there is hope. Our unique approach to recovery begins with the understanding that the dysfunction and damage caused by addiction can be overcome, not just dealt with. Don't let another day go by. Call St. Gregory today.
It's like they want to get hit.
Need a body shop?
Minor Wreck Express saves you time and money.
This is Doc with Doc and Lefty. You're listening to us on webcast1live.com. Thanks for tuning in. We're here every Tuesday from 6 to 7 p.m. We have Lefty in the audience. In the audience.
Well,
today, you know. So
I am a frequent contributor to the Doc and Lefty show.
Absolutely. Absolutely. We also have Mike Sporer, who owns JLM Gun Shop over by Brad Zahn's old hardware store.
Hey, is there an actual current business in Brad Zahn's old hardware store? Because I'm sure they would love a plug. The entire time you've been saying,
well,
Brad
as soon as
Zahn's
they
old
advertise
store.
with us, we'll plug them.
I'm actually in Brad Zahn's old hardware store.
Oh, are you in? He's in the old hardware store.
Yeah.
Oh, you see, I thought he owned. Oh, you're right. You are.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
See, I thought
Never
Express
mind.
Fitness was in there. I thought he was
they're on
actually
the
on
corner.
the end.
No, Brad was in
That's
right where I am.
You're right.
I don't know
Anyway,
how he
he's
got
in
there.
Brad Zahn's old hardware store.
Well, fantastic. Now everybody knows where it is.
Absolutely. Well, today I'm last night I was going through my Facebook thing and there were some people talking about, we're going to reintroduce the death penalty. And I thought, well, exactly how, worthless is that,
Pretty worthless.
Yeah. And so then today I hear that Kent Sorensen, because of these two girls that were kidnapped and killed up near Dyke, is that the name of the town?
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
Yeah. Up near Dyke, they, he's going to introduce a death penalty because that's supposed to be able to prevent people from doing crazy, stuff like that. And Mike, what's your take on the death penalty?
I like the death penalty a lot from an economic point of view. I don't think it stops anybody from doing anything.
Yeah.
But I just simply don't want to warehouse monsters like that for 30 years.
Blake, we've talked about this before.
Mm-hmm.
Weigh in.
Well, you know that I'm just completely anti-death penalty.
Sure.
Essentially, from the unicorn fairy dust land of not reducing human beings to economic values, to me the death penalty is state sanctioned murder. There's not a whole lot that I can say that really conveys my feelings any clearer on that. And it doesn't prevent violent crime. I don't think that there's been any sort of argument about that in the last 40 years.
Well, that's true. And my issue with, I would agree with Mike. I think that if liberal lawyers didn't, rack up the expense of endless appeals and endless all kinds of stuff, that, it'd be a lot cheaper to house these guys.
It would be, but darn those constitutional rights, Mike. Right, Mike?
Well, but it's the manipulation of the Constitution. The Constitution.
How so?
Well, you challenge every single thing. It's not really about protecting the Constitution. It's about, doing away with something you don't like by manipulating the Constitution.
Oh, I don't know about that. I mean, I think that that my good friend and our mutual acquaintance Ted Sporer would agree with me on this one, that if you have a legitimate grounds for appeal, and there are tons of people who can just wax poetic about whether or not it's a legitimate ground or not, but there are things recognized in the Constitution and the Supreme Court's interpretation of the Constitution that allow these appeals to go on. You have your trial conviction, you have your direct appeal, then you can have, if there's new evidence or some sort of post-conviction relief action where the lawyer from your first appeal was not competent, it goes on and on and on. But I think that why courts are willing to hear a lot of those appeals has been this steady progression towards phasing the death penalty out. And you don't just see that in this country, you see that worldwide, that countries are less and less comfortable executing their citizens.
Well, one of the things that Ken Sorensen has said, at least on Facebook, if I recall correctly, is, he believes that this will help prevent tragedies like this, make people stop and think there's an actual death penalty. I can tell you, working with the population of scumbags that I do, that none of them ever think about that. They always think they're going to get away with it. They never think that, they always think the cops are stupid and never get away.
That they're smarter than everybody.
Yeah. Now, one of the things is I don't think I would necessarily support a death penalty, but I think I would support the death penalty in cases where, there's DNA evidence. What do you think, Mike?
I agree completely. I think with DNA, with DNA being what it is today, and a lot of the appeals that have been going on in the last 20 years is because of, sometimes they got the wrong guy.
Absolutely.
Down south of the Mason-Dixon line in the 50s, they just picked out the first black guy they could find. So we got to be very, very sure about these things. So yeah, I agree completely. It's not a deterrent. I don't think anybody can. I think that's just a ludicrous argument. People that are driven to kill, especially children, I don't think they're thinking about the death penalty.
No, and there's no stopping them. That's the thing. If you and as a psychiatrist, you can speak to this. Like there are folks out there who have, through some sort of combination of their environment or their genetics or whatever, are hardwired to kill, and they're hardwired to kill certain types of people, depending what their preference is, and no law, no gun, well, maybe a gun would, but no legislation or threat of violence is going to deter them from that goal that they have. That's just kind of how crazy people are.
I think if DNA determines, if we catch the person that killed those two little girls and DNA evidence proves us beyond a doubt that they're the people, I'm a huge advocate of the death penalty.
Yeah. No, I'm just, even then.
Really?
Yeah, even then. It's not, I'm not trying to be callous towards the families of the victims. It's just in that particular instance, it's just that if the rule of law is supposed to be set in place to deter people from taking out their own private acts of revenge, then the state acting out its own sort of like revenge on a particular person, I don't feel like it makes the families feel better. Maybe some people it does, but overall I don't think it does. I think that they'd rather just it never happened in the first place. And death upon death upon death is no remedy, in my opinion.
Well, let me take this a slightly different direction, because I deal with this population all the time too. If these guys, let's say Tex Watson, you guys know who Tex Watson is, right?
Sure.
Right? You know who he is?
Mm-mm.
Charles Manson's main killer.
Oh, sure. Yeah.
He supposedly did all the killings.
He supposedly did. I'm not quite sure he did, but he claimed he did. Yeah. Here he is with a gene set that none of the rest of us really want procreated. Right?
Mm-hmm.
You don't want, nobody, not even his kids would want to be the son of Tex Watson or the daughter of Tex Watson. there is a gene somehow that kicked in that made him want to kill and over and over and over in the most hideous and violent manner possible. Tex Watson, not only did he start a church, he got married and had 4 kids. If he had been executed, we wouldn't be having his genes floating around.
Yeah. Have his kids killed anybody?
That doesn't matter because sometimes it skips a generation. I deal with that all the time. People that genes, they always talk about, in the Bible, begetting,
right.
There are certain traits you pass on. Aggression and violence is one of them.
Right. But then also in the Bible, it talks about the sins of the father being visited upon the 7th generation. And that's not our law though. So, I mean, and that's the thing.
But it's a very practical application. You can get rid of a lot of these guys that are impregnating all these kids, all these women. Because part of the thing that I see is these women come into my office being impregnated by these scumbags, and their kids are all screwed up. And they're going like, well, I don't understand why your kid's all screwed up. Well, they get screwed up because of his genetics. You procreate with a scumbag, don't be surprised when you get a scumbag.
I thought that the conservatives didn't like eugenics, Doc.
Well,
that's what it sounds like to me.
That's not necessarily eugenics. Eugenics is trying to create a super race. I'm not trying to create a super race.
Aren't you trying to breed out the killer gene? Isn't that? Should we just leave that up to the fates?
Well, you actually think that these people who are in jail after these horrific crimes should be allowed to procreate? Do you think they should be allowed to have conjugal visits?
I don't think a lot of them do.
But a lot of them do.
Like
a lot of them do have visits. Tex Watson, we just got done talking about him.
He started a church. Has he been reformed?
Yeah, he's been reformed.
They didn't reform that gene.
That gene doesn't count.
I mean, but you and I, when you talk about the criminal justice system, you and I agree on this one that if you take your punishment, then it's like it never happened. You and I are big advocates. You are big proponents of that, and so I feel like if and also just to kind of like bring it back down to reality. I mean, serial killers and people with these genetic defects who go out and kill people in large quantities are a vast minority of the violent prisoner population in this country. They just, the people that kill in this country are more likely hotheads or did it because they caught somebody cheating or because they they tried to steal something valuable and didn't get away with it.
Didn't get paid for their crack.
Right, exactly.
Yeah. Now let's go over some of the things that are going to be happening this weekend. Do you have a list handy?
Oh, yeah, I always do.
Well, there's a couple that I want to go over. One, Kim Schmidt, Republican supporter extraordinaire.
I remember him.
Yeah, is having a birthday today, so happy birthday to Kim. Also, Morgan Hart, a local female comedian who is funny as all blazes, is doing a show December 21st. And so go out, Facebook, Morgan Hart, Hart. Find out where her show is because I don't have my Facebook up for some reason, and go catch that show. The Des Moines Social Club has some exciting news. They're going to be announcing that tomorrow, so keep tuned on Facebook for that. You ready, Blake? Or
oh, I just handed something here from our good friend Ed Simmons. He wanted to point out how sort of an interesting coincidence while we were talking just now, a gunman just opened fire at a mall in Oregon, and that's not good news. That's really awful. And we were just talking about what happened at a mall, and being that it's Oregon, it's pretty likely that there's a gun-free zone at that mall, which It's really a horrible thing to think about. But because this is the Doc and Lefty show, we don't like to go out on these sour.
We've done that. This will be the third week in a row.
Notes for crying out loud. People killing, people dying, people hurting, even crying.
People tune us out at the last 5 minutes. That's
it's just because it's a downer. It's a nice intellectual conversation, and then downer. But no, I've got my good friends from It's Complicated have a couple gigs coming up that you should definitely check out. My buddy Kiefer Brandt, who is a lead singer and guitar player, has got a solo show tomorrow at 8 o'clock. I believe that's going to be at the BBC, which is sort of the hub for all things rock and roll in the Clive Urbandale area. I got some good friends of mine that are moving to Hawaii in January, so we wish them luck. And if you're we're getting close to Christmas and New Year's Eve, and so if you got any if you're sticking around, if you can't make it home to family, just tune in next week, and we'll kind of try and give you a good list of things to do over the holidays, so you don't feel so lonely and disconnected.
You bet. Now we have Mike Sporer with JLM Gun Shop. He's over in Brad Zahn's old store. His number is 331-1577. Is there anything you want to tell anybody out there about your shop or anything like that before we go? We have about 20 seconds.
Just, a great mom and pop gun, ammunition, supplies shop. We'll take good care of you. We're priced like the big stores, but
right. Well, he's actually cheaper than the big store.
Good service.
That's the truth. You're listening to Doc and Lefty. I am Doc. We'll see you back next week from 6 to 7 p.m. Thanks for tuning in tonight. Have a pleasant evening.
Good evening, everybody.